for our particular team, Friday was a learning experience for us in Tampa, and I really thought that it would be. What I probably didn't think about until we actually landed, went to practice, went through the routine, was that was a lot of our players' first sort of road trip, because sometimes we do close scrimmages on the road, and we did not do that this year. So first experience for a lot of young players, and to be honest with you, it was a disappointing loss in a lot of ways because I thought we could have controlled some of the things that went wrong. But as I told them in the locker room after the game, first of all, it's one game, and we've got a long way to go with this season. And the second thing is there were just so many players that were in different scenarios and situations and roles than they had ever been in. Not just the freshmen, but Charlie playing 36 minutes. First feeling for her to play that long and at that level. I thought, our freshmen sort of looked like freshmen on the road in their first game. So lots of things that we immediately were able to address yesterday in the film session and get to work on. And I thought in a really short span of time, they made some improvement that sometimes you have to play the game and get exposed before they decide they want to improve. And I thought that we did that yesterday in some areas. Excited again about playing at home. UTSA on Thursday will be a challenge for us, and then Arizona coming in here on Sunday is going to be a gigantic challenge. They're a really, really good basketball team, as UTSA is, and they play a similar style, so it'll be preparation in both games will be really pretty similar. And before I take questions, I just want to say thanks to all the veterans out there. My father was a veteran and served in the Army. I was born in Germany while he was serving, and grandparents both were in the service. So I want to thank all of the veterans across the country for what they do. And secondly, just want to thank the Moody Foundation for the unbelievable gift over the weekend, and just a remarkable impact that it will have on Texas basketball and our community.
Considering their availability during the lead up to the season, what did you think of the minutes you got at Joyner and Sugg on Friday?
I was surprised that Shug was able to play as many minutes, to be honest with you, at one point, because she was limited. And at one point, I looked over in the second half and I said, Jamie, how many more minutes does Shug have? So she had to walk down and ask the trainer, because what we don't want to do with Shug and Izzy in particular right now is set them back by getting selfish, so to say, and say, okay, you're ready, so we're going to throw you to the wolves and max you out. And we're trying to be really, really cautious with that, because both of them, it's their feet. And you have to be very careful when you start to bring someone back. But I was pleased really with her minutes. I mean, you could tell she wasn't her normal self. Probably more than anything, just the mind of, well, this is what's next, and I have to help my team. Joyner, I thought, was actually pretty sharp for not having practiced. And, I mean, literally those two practiced the day before we played. And first extended minutes that they've had, well, Shug for a long time, and Joyner in a couple of weeks. So I was actually very pleased with their ability to step in and make a difference for us.
Two questions. First, how did it get away from you late after you took that fourth quarter lead? What was the key to their 15-5 run down the stretch?
It's a great question, because we had to address it yesterday. It was really toughness, and you don't win on the road without, I'm sure Shaka just had a long conversation about toughness on the road. And that was a learning experience for our young players. I mean, you're on the road against a really good basketball team that went through a lot of the same things we went through last year and probably tested their toughness. And when it got right down to it, you had to execute in certain scenarios, and you had to finish, so to say, your possessions. And I thought the difference in the game was they finished some possessions and we fell short in that. What I mean by that is we just didn't make like maybe an extra pass that needed to be made, or we didn't get that box out. I mean, there were some very critical box outs that I thought we played really good defense, made them take a tough shot, and then we just sort of stood around and let them go get an extra possession. It's a possession game on the road like that against good teams, and we'll understand that. We'll make the changes I think that are necessary, and we'll grow from that. But it was a tough one to swallow because we took the lead and didn't finish.
And then second, with your feel for this team, how long do you think it will take to get them where you want them to be? I mean, how long will you have to grind through the, Shug's minutes and getting them together and the freshman learning and all those kind of things? How long a process do you think this might be for your team?
I think some of it is they have to make some decisions to, be a little bit tougher in practice and a little bit maybe more disciplined because, let's face it, we don't have a lot of numbers, so a lot of our reps are going against practice guys that may or may not give us the exact look that we're going to get against a team that's preparing for us. And I don't mean that in any type of way. We can't function without those guys, but we have to have the discipline to do the little things and the fundamental things, even if that's not happening necessarily against them in practice. You still have to do it so that it will transfer over to the game. And so I think the quicker we make the decision to do that on a daily basis, the better. I also think that some of these guys need game experience. Again, just looking at Charlie's contribution in our game, there were times in timeouts that she's breathing pretty heavy, and I'm thinking, I thought to myself, that's good. This kid's finally getting to taste this. Every day she'll get better, just the reps of the game and the feeling of what that feels like to push yourself in a game and then regroup mentally and refocus. Our freshmen will contribute. There's no question about it. They're really good basketball players, but they need the time and the minutes, and then we need the time for Shug to get her timing back. And I don't have, to answer your question, I don't know. I think Shug will get it back quicker than the other ones. We'll get used to the minutes. So it could be December, it could be January, but if they stay healthy, I like what we have. I really do. And I like their approach. Just need to fine-tune a lot of things right now.
How many guys do you need in practice? How many guys do you have?
Well, you'd like to be able to go 5-on-5, and we don't really necessarily have enough to do that. Especially, we have 10. Okay, we have 10 players, and that's including players that just now started practicing. That's including one that just joined our team a few weeks ago, and Sophie. So we have 10, and those players still have limited minutes in practice. So, yes, Oh, we have a bunch. It's a great group of guys. I'd love for you to meet them sometime because, first of all, they have fascinating stories. They're here at Texas to get an education, not to be basketball players, and so their stories are phenomenal. But again, they're not here to learn all the plays of the other team, and they do the best that they possibly can. But matching the physicality because they have to be careful with that. And then we get into a game like the other day where I thought South Florida surprised us with their physicality. And that may be us trying to figure out the fine line with being physical and aggressive. But, you've got Charlie who fouled out of the exhibition game and then doesn't even have a foul in the first half against a really good South Florida team. Well, she might have stood around a little bit trying to get, but my point is that there's a fine line with that. How do you figure out how to stay aggressive? That's where your discipline comes in, and you get used to the reps of, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to manage my fouls. They'll learn all that as they go along. They really will.
And what's the top of your worry list? Because I know there are a lot of areas you didn't shoot well from three and they had turnovers. So what's at the top of your worry list?
Yeah, I would say the turnovers, but some of them, I think, were just youth of, being in that first game, the jittery and all of that. When I went back and looked at the film, it was more the physicality that we have to adjust to. We're going to see that again this week, and we have to start to figure out how to be a lot tougher and a lot more physical, and again play that line of not fouling. The worry list, I would say, you definitely you have to shoot the ball better because they loaded the paint pretty good. I know the game wasn't on TV, but they were loaded pretty good in trying to get us out of the paint. Therefore, there were some perimeter shots that I told the team afterwards. I said I have a hard time thinking we're going to go 1 for 9, just because of what we do in practice. Now, if we didn't make any shots in practice, I'd say we might want to go to the drawing board. But we actually do make our fair share of perimeter shots. And I will say this much: our freshmen will get better and better. They're really good basketball players. They've just got to get used to the jitters of the game.
Coaches, I wouldn't think normally are real patient people. How do you have to test yourself and your staff with your patience, your things you're mentioning, freshman experience, regulating minutes for kids that you'd probably like to see play 35 if that's necessary to win a game?
One thing I do is rely on my staff, my support staff. I mean, I really, one thing I've grown up a little bit about is listening to the people that it's their job to figure out, whether we're fatigued, how long we need to go that day, how hard do we need to go. I mean, we have professionals here that are looking at those numbers for us, and I have a strength coach, I have a trainer, that their jobs are to try to help me a little bit with that. And so I think that's really important for me to listen. I mean, I might be irritated one day and want to go 3 hours, but that might not be what's best for our team. And so I have to be patient and smart about that, and we have to be very efficient with how we practice. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get them to learn is, can you pay attention to detail for an hour and a half and really get the most out of what you're doing in practice? And sometimes that's hard for young people. I mean, they pace themselves, so to say, or they're looking at the clock wondering, or they're thinking about what's for dinner. I mean, but what can you get out of that hour and a half, and how can we be as efficient? Our staff has got to figure that out. We have to do what's best for them.
Two things. One, who do you know that you have who will make people pay for those type of defenses, with shooting? And also, how do you teach that balance to your only 2 big kids as far as being aggressive but not fouling and having to sit out?
Well, that was one thing I recognized after, exhibition game, close scrimmage, was that we needed to referee practice. And I'm not one of those that, I don't have an out of bounds in practice. I don't, we just play. As far as trying to play through whistles, not worrying about fouls, not worrying about, whether it went out of bounds or not. And that's one thing that I've had to change a little bit of, is that we actually are refereeing scrimmage situations, which maybe we should have been doing in the first place. But to help them, yes, that's a foul. You can't keep doing that in practice. And, so I think we made some really big strides between our exhibition game, in particular Charlie. Terry worked with Charlie and Joyner extensively, and Shea on just, getting in position, moving your feet. And I thought that they made a really big improvement, because the first play of the game, they went at Joyner. Very first play of the game, to see if she would foul, and she didn't. So that was a big plus, just to show that they're working on that. The shooting, yeah.
Who is the
I think we've got a lot of kids that can shoot the ball. I mean, Jo shot it great in the exhibition game, and you could tell that was her first start, and you could tell that was her first time on the road and in a pressure situation. I didn't think she looked at all like she's been practicing. And I think Izzy and Celeste can both shoot. What was interesting is that, and I said this even yesterday after practice, we haven't played as good as we've practiced so far. And y'all know how I'm a practice person, and last year I would have never said that. But I do think that any time that you're trying to do the right things in practice, and you're making shots in practice, and then it will happen at some point once you relax and get in the flow of games, and you start to get a rotation that they're comfortable with, which we don't have at all right now. But eventually they'll get into a feel of where their role is. And I think that's when shooting becomes second nature, is when you're not having to worry so much about what necessarily your role, or when you're going to play and all of that. I think that will come, mainly because we make shots in practice.
Karen, from what you've been able to see so far, what are your impressions of this UTSA team and I guess Arizona too?
Yeah, UTSA is. I mean, they forced 30 turnovers in their first game. They play tonight, and they have an athletic bunch. They have some young kids. They'll play a lot of freshmen today. I mean, on Thursday, but they really get up and down well. I think it will force our discipline to come into play because they run through passing lanes. They're very aggressive. I don't really anticipate them playing different than the way they play against us because they're, at this point in the year, you're kind of trying to work on yourself. I think they try to create some havoc that we don't need to we don't need to get into. We need to make sure that we handle the pressure that they'll put on us and try to discipline ourselves to be able to really get the ball inside. I think we have an advantage in the paint, and we're going to have to use it against them. And then on the other side, keep them in front of us. I mean, they're athletic, they're fast, and we've got to do a good job of taking care of the paint on our defensive end too. I haven't really looked ahead to Arizona. Assistants are doing a little bit of that, but what I know of them, I mean, I saw them play last year. They're the reigning WNIT champions and our postseason NIT. And I think that they'll be a larger version probably as far as size and speed than UTSA is, but at very similar styles.
Karen, can you comment on Sedona Prince's claims that she felt unsafe during her medical treatment here? And given the number of transfers of some pretty high-profile recruits you've had, are you finding yourself in a bit of a defensive position now on the recruiting trail in terms of what's maybe being used against you? But if you could start with Sedona, please.
Yeah, I'd like to not comment on that particular subject, but I will comment on transfers in general. I think the portal has created a different climate in college sports. And I mean, I'm kind of from the world of you're supposed to do something and commit to it and stick with it no matter what goes awry or you didn't like what happened that year or whatever. I mean, that's how I've always felt about things, and sometimes things don't exactly go your way. I mean, I would use Joyner Holmes as an example. I mean, it hasn't been – I mean, there's times when she's said, what is going on here? Why is this happening? But she has stuck to it, and she stayed committed to the University of Texas and to getting a degree here and finishing what she started, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate any player that does that because I think once they get to the end of the day, they realize it really was worth something to withstand the good and the bad of your career. And it's special to get a degree here. I think this is a really special place. I think it's a really challenging place, and I think Texas is not for everyone. But in saying that, the portal has created an environment in college athletics where it is what it is as far as people leaving when things necessarily don't go their way or they just want to change. And on the flip side of that, I have to be open to it. I mean, well, can't talk about signing day until Wednesday. But there are scenarios where I think in years past I would have said, oh, there's something wrong with that kid. I'm not taking them, because used to, I mean, let's be real. Used to, if kids transferred, there's a reason. And you're kidding yourself if you used to take them and not realize there was a reason. But now I think that that's just our climate, and you have to be open-minded on both sides of it. So we can keep thinking negatively of it, or we can just say this is just the climate that we live in, and we have to be open-minded about all of it. I don't think anything bad about any of the people that left our program.
You mentioned the portal and the recruiting class. It's clearly that this upcoming class is not, at least in the rankings, anything like previous classes with mostly McDonald's All-Americans. Is any of that intentional on your part, or is it just how things are shaking out with the kids?
Some was intentional and some not. I mean, if I could be as blunt as I need to be about it, some was intentional. I think that you have to figure out how to get players that complement players that you already have. You have to get players that fit your style, and you have to find the pieces of the puzzle as far as needs. I mean, we're obviously needing to address the point guard situation, and we'll do that on Wednesday. And we needed some bigger bodies, and we'll do that on Wednesday. So we addressed our needs in this particular class. And also, you kind of know what. I mean, it's not like we don't recruit for the next class too. So there's a plan.
We have time for 2 more, Danny, then Kirk.
Going back to the subject of transfers, were you surprised at all that Charisma got turned down? And at this point, do you kind of know what the NCAA is looking at when they look at these waivers? Because I know she got turned down, Destiny got turned down, but there's a list of athletes who have obviously been, approved. I mean, how do you, I guess, kind of gauge that? And then what is Charisma's role going forward with this team?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about her. Yesterday, I tell you what, after we got through with practice yesterday, I'm either really excited about next year or I'm absolutely sick she's not playing right now. But to answer your first question, I don't think that you know what to expect, and I think that it's a mistake to try to figure it out because you don't know the cases of the other people. So we can all speculate and say, well, why did she get, eligible, and why is mine not, and all that, but do you really know what's going on behind the closed doors of someone else's life? So that would be the first thing I would say is I know what Charisma's situation is, and I knew that it was 50-50, and we kind of went into the situation approaching it with her in a sense of, just get ready, do the things that we do in practice every day and get better, and if it happens, great, you'll be ready to go, and if it doesn't, then let's have another meeting on where we go from here, and that's exactly what we did. I mean, I met with the strength staff as soon as her appeal was denied, and I met with Jamie on, what do we want to do with this young lady right now to make sure she's as good as she can be when she is ready to go next year. And I will say that she is she's a unique player that has a very, very high IQ, and I mean, she's big, she's got size and can play multiple positions, including the point guard position. She can shoot, and I think a year of playing in our system and some strength and conditioning work that I think she needs right now will be a added bonus as she moves ahead in her career, because she's a very special player.
She's allowed to practice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Last one, Kirk.
Karen, I know you don't want to talk about Sedona, but I guess you would agree it's bad optics for your program when a player makes those comments. And I'm wondering, does that worry you? And do you have to change any of y'all's procedures on dealing with players' injuries?
I would really prefer not to comment at all. I just continue to say that in the climate that we live in athletics, you have to worry about what you have with you, and you can't be concerned about what's not happening, who's not here. You have to put your energy in who's here, and my energy is with this team. I like them. I like what we're doing right now. I like how they've approached the work, and I think we'll continue to improve, and that is what I have to wake up every day worrying about. I can't worry about anything else. I can't even worry about, okay, well, is someone going to leave, or who are we going to try to get next? I need to coach my team and help them be the best that they can be, and I think that it's been a good experience for me in a sense of, and when I say me, I just mean like where I am in my career and all of that. Yet last year was tough in a lot of ways, and I'm much more centered right now with what I'm doing in my moment. That's all I'm worried about.